Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another week of polling from Political Power Ranker. I'm Chris Berg, Director of Content, Political Content for Next Star Media Group affiliates across the country. And joining me again, as always, my friend, my coworker, and the man with a mission to get everything right, Spencer Kimball, Emerson College Polling Director. Hello, Spencer.
Chris, great to see you. Can't believe it's almost been a year.
It is almost been a year for the show, and each day more people find us. So it is that is terrific to see. And your numbers they're right. So why shouldn't they come find us and see what you're talking about?
That's
So
right.
you've done a great new poll here, national numbers right before Christmas. So let's talk about the poll.
Yeah, Chris. So this is our final poll of the season for 2025, taking a look at the country. And this is going to be our last poll using registered voters. Moving into 2026, we're going to move over to likely voters, those who are going to vote in those midterm elections, as opposed to, at this stage, a larger group of voters. And as you can see here, we've got 1,000 people. And I'd like to thank the over 30,000 people that have taken our surveys this year. Without you taking the time to share your opinions, this program wouldn't be available. And that goes first and foremost. But with that said, let's share those opinions in the aggregate through our public opinion polling.
Here we go. First up, Donald Trump approval rating. Talk to us about what we're seeing here and what you found.
Well, this is similar to what we saw last month. President Trump's approval has flipped since he got into office in January. You can see his disapproval is up to 50%, approval down to 41%. What's really struggling for the president is both genders, males and females, have dropped about 8 points each, but it's within the Republicans that has raised an eyebrow. Back in when he got into office, 91% of Republicans approved of the president's performance. That number's down to 79%. So while it's still very strong, not nearly as strong as it was when he came into office.
What's interesting, I went back and looked at the Bush and Obama approval ratings at the same time in their second term, and they were virtually the same. I mean, it's one thing to campaign, it's another thing to legislate and govern, and it drags on everyone, Republican and Democrat.
Yeah, it's remember, it's been 10 years of somewhat of a quasi-Trump administration for the country to, work with. And that takes a long time. If you look at the Bush and the Obama presidencies in those midterm elections in the second time, didn't go so well. So that's what the Republicans are concerned about here, looking at 2026 and trying to hold that majority support in the House and in the Senate. But what we've seen with other presidency is that it is tough to keep that second term and stay popular as you're coming into a lame duck session.
Let's go on to some issues. I mean, we've got a bunch of stuff to talk about. You've got issues here, so let's pull up that slide. Let's talk about how the president's doing.
Well, it is the end of the semester, so we decided to check on some grades. And we wanted to test out some of the big policies the president had talked about on the campaign trail and how voters are seeing them today. And the top policy for the president has been immigration. His somewhat popular plurality give him an A. And if you notice on this slide, there's generally a group of voters that, regardless of what the president does, they're going to fail the president. And it's like 36%. So you got to take that all with a grain of salt as you look at these numbers. But the concerning part, if I'm the president, is on those economic questions, he does drop. So why isn't he getting an A in the economy or affordability? That's a concern on the Republican side. And if I'm the Democrats, you might have an issue now going into 26 with healthcare because they're not rating the president very strong there. And we can start to see Democrats and Republicans talking about healthcare with those Obama subsidies. And you're beginning to see some Republican Congress people starting to switch their votes because they realize that there's an election coming in 10 months. And we're seeing that actually happening in real time.
A looming issue for sure with healthcare. The latest word, and we're taping a week before Christmas or so, is that this probably won't get resolved until January at some point in time, if it does at all. So people are going to start losing subsidies come December 31st.
And this really was strong for the Democrats back in 2018. In those midterm elections, they ran on the healthcare issue and they were very successful, winning, I think, about 40 seats. So we're going to see if they pivot back to that issue. It kind of fell off of the radar back in the presidential election. It talked more about immigration and the economy. but it seems to be percolating back up, and we'll see obviously what resonates with voters next year.
And last quick thing on this slide with immigration. You look at these numbers, it's almost 50%, and you get an A or B on immigration, the support of immigration from your panel. And that runs kind of counter to all the video that we see out there, whether it's on social media or on the mainstream media of the protests. So it's very interesting. Why is that, Spencer?
Well, obviously, the media is going to tell one side of the story, and that's what's been some of the arguments out there from the right saying that we're not getting the full narrative. But also, part of it is that we might not like to see how the sausage is being made, but we're going to go to Fenway Park and buy those sausages. So, while we may not like to see some of the activities that are happening on the screen, when we ask voters, do you approve? Do you find this? They're saying yes, especially on the immigration policy. It is a controversial issue. It's 47, with the AB. But I think some people like it more than they're willing to at least publicly say.
Well, it's everyone wants to have people who are, hardened criminals removed. It's when you get into the gray areas of people who've been here for a long time and have been contributing members of society. What happens to them, even though they did commit a crime coming across the border, even maybe a civil crime, but it's still a crime. What do you do with them?
And it is a tough issue for the president because this is disproportionately impacting Hispanic voters. And this was a group that the president made a lot of inroads with back in 24. And now they seem to be moving back towards the Democrats, perhaps on this issue. So we'll see maybe if there's a lighter approach to the immigration policy. But we'll obviously hear from the president as he tries to frame it. It could even be to the point where they look at some Dreamers Act as they start looking at different policies moving forward. President Trump seems to be open to a lot of ideas. We'll actually see what they run with.
So this next slide is one that will shock no one. But how do you get there is the real question. So talk to us about what you found here.
So we were looking, Chris, at moderate candidates, MAGA Republicans, and progressive Democrats. And the argument that we hear is that moderates are popular, but the progressives and the MAGA are the ones who are going to win the primaries. And if we take a look at these numbers, it kind of bears out. If you were able to run a moderate Democrat against a MAGA Republican or a moderate Republican against a progressive Democrat, you would do well. I mean, look at just Mike DeWine. We talked about him last week in Ohio. Moderate Republican, progressive Democrat in 22. He wins by over 20 points. This time, not the case, and we'll see what happens in Ohio. But that's where the voters are. The problem is, how do the parties get there? Because in the primaries, that's where the bases come out, the progressive base and the MAGA base, and they vote at a higher rate. So how to navigate those primaries are going to be tough. The Democrats did a pretty strong job in 25. I thought Mikey Sherrill and Abigail Spanberger were pretty moderate on the left and were able to win by double digits in their races, which is kind of what we're seeing in the polling. If we go with hard Democrat, progressive and MAGA, it's going to be a tight race. Could go in any direction, but we'll see obviously who can make it out of these primaries at those congressional levels.
There are several Senate races that are shaping up to have either both polar opposites facing one another, or one side of the aisle strong, far right or left, and one moderate. So we're going to see the proof is going to be in the pudding, really, with these races, because if your analysis may come true just by watching these things play out over the course of 26. So be a fascinating slide to look at again in November of 26.
We're going to look at it in the first week of January when we go to Texas, because you've got that kind of happening within both parties.
Yep.
For the primaries. Texas is a little different because you got to get the 50% threshold to, otherwise you got to go to a runoff. But we'll be talking about that at the start of the year.
All right, let's move on. We got a lot of slides to get to. Fave, unfave with a bunch of big names. So on top is J.D. Vance. It's almost as if, he's anointed to maybe even just win the race in 28 just by your numbers.
Yeah, normally people don't speak very highly of vice presidents. Obviously, it didn't work well for Harris. In the past, vice presidents don't really reflect that it's a great job. But right now, J.D. Vance seems to be riding the wave, really popular with Republican voters. So he's got a 83% approval or favorability with Republicans. And even with independents, he's 40, 42 favorable, unfavorable. So the independents are kind of split with him. What's interesting is if you take down this list, look at Gavin Newsom. Newsom's, when you dig into those numbers, one, he's underwater. So in California, we're saying, oh, look at how good Gavin Newsom's doing. But California is a plus 20 Democratic state. Nationally, it's not plus 20. And you can see Newsom is underwater. But he does have a base of support with black voters. And it kind of reminds me of Joe Biden. And we'll see if he's able to run a race where he's able to do well in maybe South Carolina, which would be a surprise for many considering he's coming out west. But we do see strength with those black voters for Newsom. But look at the Democrats with Newsom. It's only 60-13. You know who's under the radar that I see is AOC. She's got very similar numbers to Newsom, but she's not getting the national recognition that I see. But amongst Democrats, she's 59-11. So we can start to see where the Democratic lanes are starting to form. And on the Republican side, remember Elon and Trump had the big falling out? Well, the Trump voters still like Elon, 73-11. But Marjorie Taylor Greene, that's a newer falling out, not so much. Those Trump voters are not so popular with Taylor Greene, 21-40. So there's a falling out there, and that hurts Trump with part of his base that they got to build off on. I think the other real interesting number here is Mamdani, the mayor-elect in New York City. We think of him as a national figure, but his numbers with younger voters are actually underwater, 31-33. I was expecting a big youth following. We didn't see that here in the national numbers. So he seems to maybe not be out on the national stage as much as a local politician.
The one thing that jumped out at me was the Musk number, with the unfave being, higher than the favorable. And obviously, Dems are more have a more unfavorable view, but yet Tesla stock hit record highs here in December. All of his businesses are going strong, so it may have hit him on the political fave unfave, but it's not hitting him in the pocketbook.
No, in fact, he actually wields still a lot of political influence. If those Trump voters are still liking him, and we get into some other questions about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and younger voters, they're still following Musk. So there's these different groups that are out there, the demographics that we look at each week, and we can see that he has still got political clout. And he is going to be part of probably the Republican Get Out the Vote program for 26 because he is still popular. And unlike Marjorie Taylor Greene, who you're probably not going to see too much from on either side.
And based on all the trends, we've got one more slide to show you before we take a quick break. It's where do the Dems and Republicans stack up on the congressional ballot? And this is this is not unexpected.
No, it's been kind of flat, as we can see here. The Dems have been sitting at 44%. The Republicans are fluctuating between 40, 42. It looks, you got to put your thumb on the scale, the Dems are going to win back the House, but by how much is going to be the question. So as we start looking at those 26 races and those congressional seats, it's going to be one by one. But right now it is leaning towards the Dems.
Not surprising in an off year, even though the Republicans are working hard to try to make it not so. So, all right, Spencer, we got a bunch more numbers from your poll to talk about. First, we have to take a quick break, so we'll be right back with more from Political Power Ranker. Well, welcome back to Political Power Ranker. Chris Berg from Nexstar Media Group and Spencer Kimball, Emerson College Polling Director, walking you through another big national survey that Spencer just completed. So, Spence, we did a lot of discussions about people and candidates in the first half, but now let's talk issues. And you've got some interesting data here. With the first slide being, what do you think about all these wars and the drug war we're kind of fighting right now in Venezuela or outside of Venezuela?
Well, that's what we looked at, Chris. What are issues that we see going to be on the campaign trail here in 2026? And one of those issues is foreign policy, particularly the drug boats down in Venezuela. And we had the chance to work with Nexstar in the spring on a study on the 50th year of Vietnam. And in that study, we asked people if they thought the wars were justified or not justified. So we asked about the drug boats and we asked them if they think that those drug vote are justified or not justified. And what we find here is that in this situation, the blowing up of the drug boats is justified, maybe the most justified act since World War II, and it's also the most unjustified act since Vietnam. So we can see a very polarizing issue percolating for the American voters. How do they feel about what's happening in Venezuela? And over the course of this year, it will come to a boil one way or another, but it's very split and it's a lot different than what we've seen with other wars in the past.
This seems to be incrementally escalating. Donald Trump, as we tape today, announcing he is going to blockade all oil, Venezuelan oil tankers are coming and going from the country, and you don't know what's next. I mean, that's an economic impact, but what more military impact may happen next year or in the coming weeks?
And again, right now, the voters are pretty split. But when we went into, let's say, Kuwait or Afghanistan, there was a lot of rally around the flag at that moment. Huge support to do those type of wars. That number isn't there. That was 70, 80%. It's very much more split, but we're going to see how it plays out over the weeks and months ahead.
Now, this next one is an issue that is, I think, looming large across the country, and it's really AI driven, and it's about data centers. It's power, it's noise, it's the size of the land that it's going to take up. They can be built near communities. I mean, there are a lot of issues that surround these data centers, and it's not surprising. Surprising where you found who likes them and who can tolerate them.
Exactly. And so these data centers are already coming up around the country. And some of us have seen the ads by different companies touting their data centers as reviving older communities. Well, what we're seeing in the data is a big concern about these data centers. And this could become on the campaign trail here that the voters particularly in the Midwest. And that's where I see a lot of these ads. It's almost 2-1. They oppose these data centers. So it's going to be an interesting campaign for the hearts and minds of American voters on if they want these data centers in their backyards. We had an opportunity to study it in Pennsylvania. Very split responses about this. New issue basically percolating up and into people's neighborhoods.
And well, Virginia, we went with through we dealt with that issue in Virginia in the governor's race and in the debate, and you know, neither candidate in that debate had a very clear answer how they were going to resolve some of these issues. We're going to support the power, increasing the power capacity of our state, but the hows and whys weren't there in their answers, and I think they're all trying to figure it out.
Well, the issue, and we saw this a bit in New Jersey, is that the power bills go up. The electrical rates are going to increase because we're using all of this power in the data centers. Now, the question is who should pay for that? And will it be the big companies that are going to offset it? There's talk about new energy, nuclear energy being created. So there's going to be a lot of ideas that are going to be put in front of voters, and they're going to have to make a decision because remember, data is not going away. AI is not going, the toothpaste is out of the tube. We all want it. Now, where do we want to host it? It's a similar issue that we've had in the past on other complicated issues, and we're going to see who can resolve it and at least solve it for the voters as they come into 2026.
And nuclear, is it or is it not the new darling of both parties in order to solve this problem?
Exactly. That's what I hear on the campaign. But then who's going to pay for this and who's going to, oversee the nuclear plant? I mean, it sounds good, in talk, but now in theory, but in practice, how does it all play out? And we'll see. Maybe that is the future, in which case we'll have energy abundance and the data center energy issue, at least from a cost perspective. Remember, we're talking about pocketbook issues here in 26. The data centers seem to be increasing the cost of living. How can they create a space where it doesn't do that?
Right. All right. Another kind of issue that 10 years ago we had no idea it was even out there, but cryptocurrency and what people think of it.
Well, people are investing in it. So look at this over the course of a year. We have seen, now it used to be at 19, 20% for a couple of years in our polling, but now over this just year, it has increased up 7 points. So now we're up to, instead of 1 out of 5 people, now it's 1 out of 4 people are investing. And based on this trend, next year it could be 1 out of 3. So it looks like crypto is becoming more of a marketplace for more people, but it also is losing its value. So we're going to see how it plays out over this year. But this is really lynched on with Elon Musk. So we'll see if Musk and Trump in the crypto world continues to prosper or if there's a fallout.
Let's keep on moving because we have more data. Marijuana. Now, this is interesting.
It is because we're talking about President Trump's approval rating being underwater. And he's trying to find a different issue to move people on, and one that could also help the economy. And marijuana policy, when we look at it at the state level, the states that have passed it, it's fairly popular within those states. And we'll see on the federal level if Trump, we've heard about this really since August, September, that the administration was looking at marijuana policy issues. That's why we asked it in that poll. But looking back, it is popular. It's nearly 2 to 1 favorable. Now, what's interesting is that the people that don't find it popular are the Trump voters. So he would have to alienate his base a little to try to expand his reach of voters. And we'll see if he goes in that direction. So far,
Well,
he has not.
yeah, he has not, but it's almost as if he right now is kind of testing the waters, kind of throwing it out there that he's considering reclassifying it and seeing what kind of feedback he's getting from his base and those other are in moderate Republicans and see where it all lands. Though he's not made a decision as of this taping.
Yeah, because, as we discussed earlier, for 36% of voters, no matter what he does, it's going to not be good. So they may be smoking marijuana right now and they're going to be like, yeah, I don't want, it's Trump. So it's not. So you gotta look at it. So who can he win over by moving those policies? And in my opinion, it would be the younger voters. And the younger voters are still out there. They tend to trend towards the Democrats, but they are available. They dropped 10 points from 20 to 24. So they were for Biden by 20, and then they were with Harris by 10. So there is some movement with those younger voters. They're also new to the electorate. Remember, 18-year-olds, 20, this might be the first time voting. And so the Republicans are trying to win them over. And we actually are seeing that out in Ohio, but we'll see obviously what plays out nationally.
Well, it does have an impact on the other end of the spectrum too, because of the banking issues and the tax implications that are tied to legal reclassifying it, making it easier for people to do business in states where it's legal. He's not talking about federalize or making it legally federally, but by reclassifying it could provide an opportunity to make more money, have it expand further, because now it's just a cash business.
It is, but from when we look at it, the big issue seems to be California on the legalization. People are concerned that each state right now is creating their own marijuana, you know, marijuana, so they can't trade over state lines. One of the concerns that I see in the industry is that they don't want California just to take over all of the marijuana production in the country. So people are fighting for their turf and their space, and that's part of the rub on marijuana policy. But as far as legalization or decriminalization, that's a little bit more popular around, and we might see the president go in that direction as opposed to full legalization.
All right, it is the end of the year, and the end of the year for those who are football fans, college football playoff season is upon us. And you did a poll about who you're rooting for, and what'd you find?
Yeah, why not? And so it is the football playoffs. Where America roots with the favorite Indiana Hoosiers, and we'll see if they're able to deliver. But you can see that there's kind of like three tiers of teams. You got Georgia and Ohio State up there, and then you got your next tier, and then you got your long shots of the field. So it'll be an exciting playoff system this year, and we'll see if the Hoosiers can live up to expectations.
I mean, 11-0 Heisman Trophy winner, but it also talked that they're a perfect example of how NIL has impacted the sport of college football. I mean, Indiana has not been in this position, I don't know, 70 years, 60 years, something along those lines. And the old schools like Wisconsin and Michigan and Iowa, USC, all those perennial powers aren't there, but Indiana is. That says something.
Well, certainly, when you think of Indiana, you're thinking basketball
Right.
generally. And the idea that we've moved over to football does speak to just the different type of environment we're living in, where it's not, 1980, where you have this real set of, oh, you're going to go to this college for this or this. You can change overnight pretty quickly here with those NILs. And people in the transfer portals is pretty quick as well. So the scene of college sports is shifting, the amount of money in college sports, and we'll see. Maybe there's a connection with youth in sports and politics as this all comes to a boil over the next couple of years.
I mean, think about this. If you are a great college player, not every great college player turns into a great pro. So if you're making $5 million a year as a great college kid as a sophomore, and your projection is a mid-round draft pick in the pros, why would you leave when you can
That's
make more money in college? I mean,
Yeah,
that's
I think you're seeing that, and particularly on the women's side, there's not as much money in the professional women's sports field as there is in the collegiate female sports, and so there's more money in the sponsorships. But that's all going to continue to grow, and we'll come up with new leaders and new product sponsors as we move forward
and probably new rules. And one
in
last
time.
slide, and let's just talk about holidays. It's Christmas season, and everyone loves Christmas.
At least the majority of American voters do, 51%, followed by Thanksgiving. So we are in that time of the year, but Christmas really does outdo Thanksgiving. What was interesting here was Easter losing out to Halloween, but it was nice to see the 4th of July still rally up into the top four.
We should probably say Christmas slash Hanukkah, just to make sure we're an inclusive group here as we wind down 2026. All right, so we have just wrapped up a huge number of slides and a bunch of data. So thanks for all of that, Spencer. But we have one last thing that we always do each week, and what's up and what's down, and we'll be right back with that. Welcome back to the final segment of Political Power Ranker, where we're going to look at what's up and what's down. Spencer, to you, what's down?
Well, we'll start with what's down, and it looks like the economy is still down here. When we ask voters how they approve of the economy, it's slightly underwater, and we'll see if it can bounce back in 2026.
But we need to be positive here as we end the year with this last show. What is up?
Well, we asked voters, do you think that 26 will be better or worse than 25? And a majority, 53%, think that 26 is going to be better than 25. So 2026 is up in our books.
They may be having their fingers crossed that the economy is going to get better in 26 too. So that would make it better for everybody. We've got one more thing that's up too, and that is Political Power Ranker. We started the year with zero people watching us. And each week now, we're getting anywhere from 25 to 50,000 people watching us on YouTube, watching us on our CTV channels, or even a larger number. Participating in our social, as you can see right there in the graphic, has been through the roof. Spencer, your Twitter feed on Emerson College Polling has been through the roof as well. So that's another big win for Political Power Ranker and Emerson College Polling. So congratulations. So congratulations on a great 26 with PPR, or 25, I should say.
And we're looking forward to 26.
26 is going to be even better. All right. Everyone, thank you for joining us. Have a great Christmas, New Year's, whatever celebration you celebrate for the holidays. We appreciate you all watching, and we will see you in 26.